Hello, this is Amy, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the Sunday, July 19th issue of the Democrat and Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Cover story: United by Oath, Our New Americans on What It Means to Become a U.S. Citizen in 2026. After years of waiting, Rochester residents become citizens. This is my home now. Steve Howe, Kayla Kane, and Carrie Weaver, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. As the United States celebrates its 250th anniversary year, the definition of American citizenship has been debated legally and politically. For Rochester area immigrants who have spent years completing the naturalization process, citizenship means different things: security and belonging, opportunity and aspiration, participation and voice. Before U.S. District Judge Elizabeth Wolford administered an oath of allegiance to a gallery of new American citizens earlier this year, she first shared the story of her own family's heritage. 3 generations ago, Wolford's great-grandmother fled Italy as a teenager to escape her parents' plans to send her to a convent. In America, she met a man who would become her husband. They had 4 children together. Her lineage continued with Wolford's grandfather, a small business owner, her mother, a school teacher, and Wolford, now a federal judge. I was born in this country, but my relatives, my ancestors, were from foreign lands, Wolford said at the February ceremony. That's the story of this country, folks. The greatness of this country lies in the diversity of each and every one of its citizens. The Supreme Court delivered a defeat June 30th to President Donald Trump, denying his executive order to restrict birthright citizenship in the United States. Federal officials had abruptly canceled dozens of naturalization ceremonies late last year and paused the processing of immigration applications from countries they deem high risk. The court's 6-3 ruling now ensures that children born in the country are considered Americans. Meanwhile, Trump's war on immigration has left asylum seekers, refugees, and others seeking legal status in pending proceedings vulnerable to detention and deportation. We wondered what's going through the minds of people choosing to become new American citizens, especially in 2026. The winding road to citizenship. For Priscilla Adriaccio of Rochester, the naturalization process involved a lot of work, a lot of money, and a lot of paperwork. Andriaccio moved to this area from London 22 years ago, first on a work visa and then on a fiancé visa, 2 years after meeting her now husband. The couple has 2 children born in the United States. It's not a quick process, she said. You're constantly waiting. After their first attempt at securing a green card was denied for financial reasons, Andriaccio and her husband hired a lawyer to guide them. She said she would advise anyone going through the naturalization process to do the same. You wait a long time for that interview, and you make one little mistake and you're right back to the beginning, and you're waiting another year before you get an interview, Andriaccio said. After 2 green cards kept her in the country for 2 decades, Andriaccio said the U.S. has become her home. With her family and career based in Rochester, completing naturalization has allowed her to continue the life she built here without the label or worries of a temporary status hanging over her head. So being a citizen makes you feel free, Andriaccio said, and I guess that's why they call it Land of the Free, because you feel free. Fears of deportation. In the Monroe County Legislature chambers, 13 individuals took the life-changing step at a naturalization ceremony. Toward the end of the June 16th ceremony, the group, Some with tears in their eyes stood up to take the oath of allegiance. Family and friends of the newly naturalized citizens joined in to congratulate their loved ones and take pictures to remember the moment. Antonio Cruz Zavaleta, who is from Mexico, talked about how the moment felt unbelievable and how he was grateful for the opportunity. Zavaleta was born and raised in a small town in the state of Osaka, Mexico. He moved to New York to do some work with some art-related institutions in the early 1990s and continued doing art for the last 34 years. After being this long in New York, I started entertaining the idea to go back to my hometown and live there for my retirement. But Donald Trump became president, and his policies against immigrants made me fear for my safety, he said. Zavaleta said a good friend of his found him a lawyer and started the naturalization process. I thought about it and decided I have lived more than half of my life in this country, and going back home would be difficult to start again from zero. So I decided to follow up and continue with my friend's work to make me a citizen, he said. It was complicated because of the threat of ICE. There was fear and thought about self-deportation. Zavaleta said he received a letter from immigration notifying him that the application was accepted and to meet with a U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services agent. Soon after, Zavaleta received the letter telling him to attend the citizenship ceremony. I am now a USA citizen, and I feel grateful for the opportunity to be here with my family and friends without the fear of ICE catching up with me and giving me trouble, Zavaleta said. Living his American dream. Rochester Jazz Fest artistic director John Nugent grew up in Eastern Canada and Newfoundland. His grandfather imported instruments, including Steinway pianos, from New York City, regaling him with stories of seeing Charlie Parker and Miles Davis perform. Nugent received his first alto sax at 11 years old. While attending the University of North Texas, Nugent's music career flourished. He came to love the U.S. during his extensive travels with the 1 O'Clock Jazz Band and Woody Herman Orchestra. Nugent met his wife at McGill University in Montreal, but the couple married in the Manhattan courthouse while on study grants in 1994. He became a U.S. citizen in 1999. It allowed me to fulfill my dreams. It allowed me to pursue my craft. I would never be able to be a major concert producer in Newfoundland, he said. New Americans celebrate citizenship in Rochester. In a packed courtroom inside the Kenneth B. Keating Federal Building in downtown Rochester in February, political and legal uncertainty seemed to be nothing more than outside noise. 30 people from 21 countries had made it to the finish line after an exhaustive process that included interviews, character screenings, language and civics tests, and a $710 application fee. All of them had been living in the United States for several years. They knew exactly what it took to become an American. When I come here, I don't know English to say hi, said Curicia Isaac. She moved to the United States from Kenya on June 18, 2016. Her husband and 4 children have already gone through the naturalization process. Isaac was the last in her family to secure citizenship. Now I know how to talk, to communicate with everybody, she said. I love this place. God bless America. Imad Irian called citizenship a kind of honor. He and his wife, Mariana Said, left Egypt in 2020 to seek a better future for their children. Said took her citizenship oath last month. You feel like you belong with the country, she said. It's a good feeling. Arian and the couple's daughter, Marvi, took their oath in February. His son, who is 17, will now automatically acquire citizenship. Arian said he plans to apply for the boy's U.S. passport. Ricardo Martin Jimenez Soto decided last year he would apply for citizenship after more than 15 years in the country because he wanted more of a voice in what's happening around him, even if it represents just one vote. "This is my home now," the Costa Rica native said simply. Becoming a U.S. citizen through naturalization. Have you ever wondered what it takes to become a U.S. citizen? There's a lot more to it than you may think. For individuals who were not born in the U.S., many go through a process called naturalization to become a U.S. citizen. Naturalization is the process of voluntarily becoming a U.S. citizen. The naturalization process usually takes 6 to 14 months, but the timeline can vary depending on the specific U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Office. There are several requirements an individual must meet for the process, which includes being at least 18 years old when applying, being able to read, write, and speak basic English, and having good moral character. In order to be eligible for the naturalization process, you must also fit in one of these categories: a lawful permanent resident of 5 years, married to a U.S. citizen and lawful permanent resident for 3 years, a U.S. military service member, a child of a U.S. citizen. After determining eligibility, individuals must fill out Form N-400, the application for naturalization, and pay a filing fee, which is $710 when applying online or $760 by mail. Once the application has been submitted, the remaining steps of the naturalization process include a biometrics appointment, completing an interview and a citizenship test, and taking the oath of allegiance to the U.S. upon approval. After taking the oath of allegiance, the newly naturalized citizen can enjoy expanded rights such as voting in federal elections, running for federal office, and applying for a U.S. passport. Carrie Weaver. Naturalization Oath of Allegiance to the United States of America. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Source: U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. For departing reporter, Rochester will always shine. Justice Marbury, columnist, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. When I was a teenager, Rochester was a place that had a strong sense of community and mixed reviews. A lot of my friends loved it here, while a good portion were waiting on their first ticket out, me included. It wasn't always that way, and my opinion of the city has changed a lot over time. Growing up in Rochester, I was fortunate that my family made sure I kept busy. From performing with Miss Sweet Potato Pie to endless trips to the city's various museums, parks, and festivals, my weekends, school breaks, and summers were jam-packed. Back then, that's what made Rochester special to me, what made it shine, the time spent with my family, friends, and neighbors. The city was a place that I could stay forever, a place that I couldn't have imagined leaving. As teenage angst kicks in, so do the worries of the world. I still kept busy hanging out with friends and family every weekend. It was always a fun time, but I also became hyper aware of things going on around me. The crime going on in my neighborhood, my parents' divorce, the pressure to do well in school, work at Edgerton Recreation Center, and more. I had determined that at the end of high school, I would without a doubt be leaving Rochester for college. I had applied to colleges all around the country, but some part of me knew that I would miss the community I've built. Rochester has a way of doing this. It's like the stars always align here, and things work out the way that they are supposed to. An opportunity arose. I ended up taking a summer photojournalism course at the Rochester Institute of Technology and fell in love with the field. After meeting several professors and potential peers, I had once again added to this community I had built. Although I knew that I wanted to leave the nest for college, I also knew that RIT was the place for me. Throughout my time at RIT, some of that shine had come back as I often found myself defending Rochester to my friends from bigger cities. Their complaints were always the same. There's nothing to do here. Rochester is so boring, etc. I drove them around town to some of my favorite places growing up to meet my family and more. I think I played a part in making them feel that Rochester shine too. Graduation was approaching. I needed a job, and I, again, just knew that this was my time to leave Rochester. But as I mentioned earlier, the stars aligned, and there I was in an interview with the Democrat Chronicle for the summer 2022, revisiting the Rochester Narrative Fellowship. I accepted the job and was able to work an entire summer reporting on the Joseph Avenue neighborhood. That role determined my thought process on all future reporting. With my peers, I went to the neighborhood over and over and over again. I was able to meet and form connections with so many people and businesses. Rena Golden of the Avenue Black Box Theater, Jaime and Amelia Rivera of Local Motion Sport and Fashion, and Mark Flagg and Steve Brown of the Fried Fish Shack, to name a few. Connections and stories such as these fueled my work. Within a year and a half, I had become the 19th Ward and Neighborhoods reporter. In this role, the connections continued to grow. Every time I'd show up to such places as the Square Fair, the Westside Farmers Market, candlelight dinners, So Green, Brooks Landing Diner, St. Monica Church, and the Thurston Road YMCA Neighborhood Center, I felt welcomed with open arms. I had been building a community with the people that I'd been reporting on, adding to the community that I've already had for years, a community that could keep me in Rochester forever. But again, Rochester has a funny way of making things work out the way they should. Another opportunity arose, and I am both pleased and saddened to announce that I will finally be moving out of Rochester to Colorado. Although my Rochester chapter has closed for now, the community I've built here remains strong, and I can officially say that the city, in my eyes, has gotten all of its shine back, the same shine from my childhood. I look forward to coming back to visit. I want to thank everyone who has been a part of my journey, both personal and professional. I want to give a special thanks to everyone in the 19th Ward who has been supporting me and making my job a bit easier for the last 2.5 years. As a Rochester native, Justice Marbury entered the world of journalism to create work where voices like hers were heard, the voices of minority communities. Marbury has covered small businesses, neighborhood concerns, and the interesting people who live in Rochester's 19th Ward. As the 19th Ward reporter, she helped implement community outreach ideas by asking what people in various communities want to read about themselves, in addition to regular news. Inspiration. Guide looks to history to foster change in present. Carria Weaver, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Christopher Grooms wears many hats. Tour guide, interpreter, and historian, but in every role, he strives to make a difference in the community. When you're not seeing him working as a sign language interpreter, you will probably catch him giving a tour at Mount Hope Cemetery, retelling the history of a notable figure. Grooms grew up in Portland, Oregon, and lived in Seattle and Houston before making his way to Rochester, where he has lived for 9 years. Grooms was drawn to the many outdoor activities that Rochester has to offer, as well as the city's art scene and its rich history. He also was aware of Rochester's large deaf population and saw an opportunity to use his sign language interpreting skills. A tour that changed his future. Before moving to Rochester, Grooms and his partner came for a visit in August 2016 and booked a tour at Mount Hope Cemetery, and he recalled a woman named Joanne Mitchell being the tour guide. She just gave this wonderful tour and highlighted some of the people that are interred here, and really expanded on Rochester's history. She was just so dynamic. I just absolutely loved it, Grooms said. When we left, I told my partner, if we move here, that's what I want to do. I want to be Joanne Mitchell. When I started training as a tour guide, Joanne became my mentor. Local history still matters. Being a tour guide is a gratifying experience for Grooms. Not only does he have a love for history and storytelling, but he also enjoys the conversations he has with people and that moment when someone learns about a piece of history they never knew about. Now more than ever, it is extremely important, especially for young people, to learn and understand history, he said. If you think of people like Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony and their work within the civil rights realm and their successes, I think that those stories need to be told so that young people can say, oh, look, I as an individual can make a difference. I can affect change. I can change something that is not right and not fair, Grooms said. He also highlighted the technological scientific achievements that started in Rochester and how that history could inspire new inventions and leaders. With Bausch & Lomb here, Xerox, Eastman Kodak, and so forth, all of those technological achievements, I think it's just very important for, again, our young people to know that they can aspire to be somebody who comes up with something new, some new invention that really changes people's lives. Carrie Weaver works as the government and you reporter for the Democrat and Chronicle with a focus on how government actions affect communities and neighborhoods in Rochester and Monroe County. Remarkable Rochesterians. Elmer Hind, 1910 to 2006. The Reverend Elmer Hindle, one of the most highly decorated chaplains in World War II, was born and raised in Rochester and graduated from St. Andrew's Preparatory Seminary and St. Bernard's Seminary. A Catholic priest ordained in June 1936, Hindle enlisted as a chaplain in March 1942. He was awarded the Bronze Star in 1944 for assisting in the burial of American dead and ministering to the wounded while under fire in Bougainville in the Solomon Islands. In 1945, he received the Silver Star for helping wounded American soldiers in Luzon in the Philippines in 1943 while under heavy Japanese tank and mortar fire on 2 occasions. He received the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest combat medal, for his extraordinary heroism in action, dragging a wounded soldier to an aid station while under heavy machine gun fire during street fighting in Manila, Philippines in 1945. In 1970, the Army awarded Hindle the Legion of Merit, one of its highest awards for service as chaplain of the 98th Reserve Training Division. He was chaplain of the division for 12 years. After returning to Rochester, Hindle served in several local parishes. After retiring in 1980, he lived at St. Charles, Borromeo, and celebrated Mass there for nearly 25 years. After moving to the Legacy at Park Crescent, he continued to serve others and celebrated Mass daily. He was the oldest active priest in the Diocese of Rochester at the time of his death, July 17, 2006. Ontario County approves Animal Abuser Registry. Mike Murphy, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Ontario County will join the counties in New York that have an animal abuse registry in an effort to limit the abuse of animals by making it harder for those convicted of abuse crimes to own animals. The Ontario County Board of Supervisors on July 16th approved the measure, which also could limit the impact of animal abuse cases on the Ontario County Humane Society, which, in addition to investigating abuse cases, also operates the Happy Tales Animal Shelter. People convicted of misdemeanor or felony level animal abuse crimes would be required to register with the Ontario County Sheriff's Office. An online public registry would then include details and pictures of those convicted. The hope is the registry would make it more difficult for animal abusers from owning, possessing, or harboring animals, while also giving others the tool to report them and perhaps rescue at-risk animals sooner. Ontario County Sheriff David Cirincione has estimated that anywhere from 10 to 15 people a year could be included on the registry. The proposed registry is modeled after similar registries in other New York counties, according to Cirincione. The New York State Humane Society shows that slightly more than half of the state's 62 counties have such laws. A similar law in Livingston County went into effect in January, although the state site shows that Monroe, Wayne, and Yates counties do not have registries. State briefs. 16-year-old seriously injured in Rochester machete attack. A 16-year-old girl was seriously injured July 17th after she was attacked with a machete at a Rochester residence, police said. Officers responded to a home on St. Paul Street near Avenue A around 7:30 a.m. after receiving a report that a man was using a machete to cut another person, Rochester Police Department Captain Greg Bello said. When officers arrived, they found the girl lying on the kitchen floor with severe lacerations across multiple areas of her body. Officers immediately applied 2 life-saving tourniquets, Bello said. The girl was taken to Strong Memorial Hospital where she underwent emergency surgery, police said. Her injuries were described as life-altering but are no longer considered life-threatening because of the quick actions of first responders, Bello said. A man in his 40s was detained following the incident. Bello said the attack did not appear to be a random act. Police said the man and the girl knew each other before the encounter, but officials did not disclose the nature of their relationship or whether they are related. Memories. 1933 sighting of Italian planes made headlines. Bob Marcotti, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Question. I remember as a small child seeing a fleet of Italian planes fly by Rochester in the 1930s. It was considered an important event at the time. What can you tell me about it? Answer. It is fascinating how something that would be taken for granted today was, not that long ago, front page news. In 1933, the mere act of crossing the Atlantic by airplane was a noteworthy feat, as noteworthy as sending men into orbit during the Sputnik era of the late 1950s. After all, Charles A. Lindbergh's celebrated crossing of the Atlantic had occurred only 6 years before. So, when Italy sent a fleet of 24 military seaplanes across the Atlantic to visit the Chicago Century of Progress World's Fair, the event was greeted with banner headlines. Some background. When fascist dictator Benito Mussolini came to power in Italy in the early 1920s, Italo Balbo was one of his key backers. Mussolini rewarded Balbo by making him Minister of the Air Force. The transatlantic flight of 1933 was Balbo's crowning achievement. Though cloaked in the trappings of a goodwill mission, it was also intended as a clear demonstration of Italy's growing prowess. In any event, the flight was a remarkable achievement. The squadron left Italy on June 30th, arrived in Chicago on July 15th, and was back in Rome on August 12th. The flight was hailed by more than mere headlines. A street was named in Balbo in Chicago. He lunched with President Franklin Roosevelt and was even appointed an honorary chief by the Sioux Indian tribe. Stormy weather over Lake Ontario kept the squadron well north of Rochester on the last leg of their arrival flight from Montreal to Chicago. However, fair weather fueled hopes the planes would pass over Rochester on July 19th during their return trip. Thousands of people gathered on downtown rooftops. Eastman Kodak Company acceded to a request from the Italian consul here and flew an Italian flag from the top of its State Street office building. And then the planes arrived, roaring low over the Manitou Hotel at Manitou Beach, much to the delight of Mr. Odenbach and a few guests who were present at the hotel at the time. The Democrat Chronicle reported the next day, passengers on the car ferry Ontario also got a pretty good view of the flyers. However, the rooftop crowds were not so lucky. By the time the planes passed Charlotte, they were an estimated 4 miles offshore. Balbo and his flyers received a hero's welcome in Italy upon their return. However, within 7 years, Balbo was dead, shot down near Tobruk in 1940 by Italian gunners who claimed they mistook his plane for a rebel aircraft. Was it a tragic mistake or deliberate murder? Various people have speculated that Mussolini regarded Balbo as a threat, was suspicious of his pro-British sympathies, and wanted him out of the way. A longer version of this column was originally published July 12, 2004. Arts along inland seas. Best Great Lakes destinations for summer road trips in 2026. Victoria E. Friel, New York Connect Team. With the nation's 250th anniversary underway, there's no better way to celebrate America's history than a road trip to places that helped shape it. The Great Lakes region, spanning parts of the U.S. and Canada, holds roughly 1/5 of the world's fresh surface water and about 95% of North America's supply, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The 5 Great Lakes, Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario, form the largest freshwater system on Earth and offer striking scenery steeped in history. This story is part of a USA Today Network project highlighting breathtaking and often underappreciated destinations across the country. The list showcases some of the most treasured views in the Great Lakes region, each with historical and cultural significance. Here are some of our favorite spots along the Great Lakes. Sioux Locks. The Sioux Locks, which connect Lakes Superior and Huron along the St. Mary's River at Salt Station, Marie, Michigan, are considered the busiest lock system in the world by cargo tonnage. About 7,000 vessel passages occur each year, moving more than 86 million tons of cargo. Operated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the locks feature 2 canals and 4 parallel chambers that allow ships to navigate a 21-foot elevation change between the lakes. The system dates to 1855. The locks close to maritime traffic for about 10 weeks each year from January 15th to March 25th for maintenance. Iron ore is the primary commodity transported through the locks, followed by coal, stone, and grain products. Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. The Grand Hotel, which first opened in 1887, is located on Mackinac Island in northern Michigan. The iconic luxury hotel, painted white, is on the National Register of Historic Places and is a National Historic Landmark. The hotel is known for its wraparound porch with lakefront views and amenities ranging from golf, live music, horse stables, and antique carriage museum, and a secret garden. Mackinac Island's peak tourism season begins in May. SS Badger in Ludington, Michigan. The SS Badger is a seasonal passenger and vehicle ferry that transports fares across Lake Michigan between Ludington, Michigan, and Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Sailing since 1953, the SS Badger was the largest railroad car ferry ever built, capable of carrying up to 34 rail cars as part of a 7-boat fleet that crossed Lake Michigan thousands of times each year. It is now the last coal-fired passenger vessel operating on the Great Lakes and was designated a National Historic Landmark 10 years ago. It no longer carries railroad cars, but it's still powered by its original coal-fired boilers and steam engines. The SS Badger's season runs from May 15th to October 12th. Route 66. Also called the Mother Road, Route 66 stretches almost 2,500 miles and spans 8 states, beginning in Chicago and ending in Santa Monica, California. Established in 1926 as a way to connect isolated rural communities, Route 66 captures a nostalgic era of Americana, one filled with neon signs, diners, and classic cars. The iconic highway reaches its centennial this year. Road trippers can make pit stops at historic sites and quirky landmarks, like the 66-foot-tall soda bottle at Pop's 66 Soda Ranch in Oklahoma. The Marblehead Lighthouse. The lighthouse, operational since 1822, is the oldest continuously operating lighthouse on the Great Lakes. According to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the Marblehead Lighthouse is one of Lake Erie's best known and most photographed landmarks. It has guided sailors safely along the rocky shores of Marblehead Peninsula, north of Sandusky, since the 1820s. The U.S. Coast Guard still operates out of the 50-foot tower, which is now part of a lakeside state park by the same name. Visitors can also stop by the Lighthouse Museum or picnic on the grounds. Presque Isle State Park. Presque Isle State Park, just 4 miles west of downtown Erie, is Pennsylvania's only seashore park, according to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. A 3,200-acre sandy peninsula that arches into Lake Erie, the state park draws around 4 million visitors annually. Known to locals simply as the Peninsula, the park in Erie County features a 13-mile road loop, an environmental center, swimming beaches, hiking and biking trails, and fishing and boating. It is also home to the historic Presque Isle Lighthouse and North Pier Lighthouse, as well as the park's Perry Monument. The monument, which was built on the park's Crystal Point in 1926, commemorates the Battle of Lake Erie in 1813 and the valor of Commodore Oliver Hazard, Perry's men. The Erie Canal. The Erie Canal is a historic waterway that eventually connects to the Atlantic Ocean and its burgeoning cities and ports to the Great Lakes system. It was built between 1817 and 1825 and stretches 363 miles from Albany to Buffalo. The canal, considered a great engineering marvel, transformed New York and made transporting goods easier and cheaper. Today, many use the waterway for recreation, typically by kayak or boat, and visit historic canal towns along it. Women's Rights National Historical Park. Women's Rights National Historical Park is located in Seneca Falls and Waterloo in New York's Finger Lakes region. The park tells the story of the first Women's Rights Convention in 1848 and is made up of 6 spots between the two cities, including the Wesleyan Chapel, where the first convention was held, and the homes of some of the convention organizers and first wave of activists, as well as a museum and park. USA 250, Most Treasured Views, is a USA Today Network project exploring places across America with historical and cultural significance, created in celebration of the USA 250 initiative, marking the nation's 250th birthday. Who we are. In hot pursuit of trivia on an island in Maine. Remarkable Rochester, Jim Memmott, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. At times like this, when the big issues seem overwhelming, there are always trivia nights. Question: wait a minute, what's a trivia night? Answer: don't you know it's an organized event when people form teams with silly names and compete to give the correct responses to questions about songs, mountains, the founding of the Republic, and other brain teasers? Question: how hard is it? Answer: depends upon your team. The best teams have a range of ages and interests. History buffs, geography buffs, and people who remember all the flags they've ever seen. Question: why in the world are you writing about trivia when you could be writing about the World Cup, blood pressure medication, and the best way to load a dishwasher, the sort of things you discuss at coffee every morning? Answer: why? I was recently a member of Trivia Newton-John, a team assembled for the weekly trivia night at Jones Landing Restaurant on Peaks Island in Maine. I quite enjoyed myself, and now I'm sharing. People say it's good to share. Question: why did they have you on the team, someone who is notoriously slow on answering any question? Answer: I think it was because Trivia Newton-John was composed of family members. My wife Cindy and my stepdaughter Emily, her husband Drew, and their kids, Franny and Margot. As long as I didn't say anything, they let me play. Question: trivia nights are opportunities to make new friends. Did you socialize? Answer: we sure did. We met a retired dentist on a nearby team and one of his buddies. Question: how did that go? Answer: super. Though as soon as we said we were from the Rochester area, they laughed and mentioned Kodak's failure to capitalize on digital photography, even though the company invented the process. How did you feel about that? I thought it was a little below the belt, but I guess trash talk is okay on trivia nights. I countered by saying Kodak was doing so well that it was recently sued, just like the good old days. They weren't impressed. What did you do to warm up? Mostly we waited for our drink order. Service was friendly but slow. The dentist's friend tried to energize his team by doing a rowing motion and saying row again and again. How did that go? His teammates didn't pick up on his use of the Norwegian fans' World Cup chant and Viking row. We joined in. It seemed like the friendly thing to do. Did the game ever start? It sure did. Franny, who is 9, got the first question right. It had something to do with a musical scale. I was impressed. What about Margot? She might have gotten a question right if she hadn't wandered off to play on the lawn with a kid in a messy shirt. She makes friends easily. So how did you do? Well, we didn't win, but we finished 4th or maybe 3rd. I wasn't sure. Not bad at all, but where did you go wrong? Mountains. The question had something to do with ranking the mountains in the western United States highest to lowest. Are you going to tell us the answer? Of course not. I wouldn't do that even if I remembered. It would spoil your fun the next time you play trivia. How are you going to play trivia? Are you going to play trivia again? I hope so, though I saw Emily and Cindy talking with the retired dentist. I think they want to get him and one of his grandchildren on our team. I may have to sit out. Do you have to go to an island in Maine to play trivia? What about Rochester? I looked up the answer to that question on my phone, which wasn't allowed at trivia night. AI told me Rochester has a bustling, highly rated pub trivia scene with games running almost every night of the week. Back to the mountains. Just for fun, tell me what western state has the highest mountain. I won't tell anyone. No way. But you might ask your dentist. They know a lot. They really do. Remarkable Rochesterian. For years, this preservationist has been a vital source of information about Rochester architecture, Rochester neighborhoods, and Rochester history. Let's add her name to the list of remarkable Rochesterians. Cynthia Houck, born 1951. The recipient of the 2026 Jean-France Special Achievement Award from the Landmark Society of Western New York, the Rochester native and graduate of East High School, joined the society in 1976 as an intern, soon after her graduation from Mary Washington College, now the University of Mary Washington, and worked there until her retirement in 2021, serving as the Architectural Research Coordinator, fielding thousands of inquiries about the area's buildings and people. She has a special interest in historic pipe organs, but she spoke to group after group about a variety of subjects, always advocating for the preservation of the area's buildings and history. Obituaries. I'm not able to read the whole listing for each individual, just their name, age, and city or town. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Gloria C. Aman, 91, Rochester. Michael John Mick Andrew, 79, Henrietta. Caroline T. Bailey, Rochester. Sadie Ragusa Bachiche, 100, Penfield. Kathleen Bessel, 76, Rochester. Nancy Briggs, Rochester. Jeanette K. Clinton, 95, Livonia. Adam G. Curtin. Isabel Kutaya. June Alice D. Amanda, 94, Irondequoit. William Bill Dianza, Rochester. Elizabeth Ann Fagan, 92, Rochester. Diane Farsiglia Marcello, 82, Webster. Daniel G. Fultz, Pittsford. Carol Stat Grotke, 79, Rochester. Allison Gage, 55, Penfield. Norman Hanson, 85, Himrod. Carolyn Hass, 87, Ontario. Kevin D. Henry, 74, Rochester. Lydia Rose Hoderlein, 33, Rochester. Regina Inge, Rochester. Daniel P. Kelly, 55, Rochester. Dennis W. Linsner, 74, Groveland. Elizabeth Malcolm, 88, Rochester. Neil Albert McNabb, MD, 97, Rochester. Dennis J. Meets, Brighton. Shirley O. Moscato, 91, Rochester. Judith Haybecker Neary. Shirley J. Newman, 88, Rochester. Marianne Pilati, 92. Dorothy R. Pusateri, 101, Rochester. Daniel F. Reardon, 94, Webster. Helen Sidori Preston, 87, Webster. Leah Thur, Victor. David Towns, 71, Rochester. May Elaine Wheeler, 87, Churchville. Daniel J. Yargo, 91, Greece. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Sunday, July 19th issue of the Democrat and Chronicle. Your reader has been Amy. Thank you for listening.